Hello everyone. In this bonus video session, we will be talking about a formula called indirect and how is it applied, where is it applied. Now consider this, that in this blank cell, if I write equal to and point to the cell B6 which contains A10, after I press enter, what should I get? A10? Yes, that's the direct answer. When I say indirect, let's see what it does. Let me write the formula indirect. Now in the reference text, if I point to the cell B6 which contains the reference A10, indirectly what I'm saying is please give me A10's answer. And what is A10? A10 points to the bank's name, State Bank of India. Perfect. If I write A9, so indirectly what does A9 suggests? HSBC. Now please note, you cannot write A9 here. Why? It'll give you a reference number. It must contain a cell's reference which should in turn contain another cell's reference. So A9 is not a valid cell reference. Why? Because had it been something like B6, B12 out here, it would have given you a certain answer. But no, it is something which is not part of any cell reference. So let me indirectly refer to a cell which contains a cell reference. Hence HSBC in this case. Okay. Now let's say, just for an example's sake, had I named this the cell as HSBC by going inside the name box and pressing enter, something which we have covered in level 1, level 2. If I go to the second cell and if I say SBI, enter. And the third one, let me go inside and say DB, enter. Now, if I write DB in this cell, indirectly it is referring to Deutsche Bank. If I write SBI, indirectly it refers to State Bank of India, and same for HSBC. Now this is something that we'll be using in one or two applications that we'll be discussing in few minutes. Let me scroll down and go to case 2. Alright. Now I have a data which talks about 3 months sales data for the year 2008 and year ending 2009. Now I would want certain formula which should automatically look inside this cell year end 2008 and should give me those 3 months details. Summation. Similarly, if I choose 2009, it should give me the total of year end 2009 automatically. So Excel, although we'll be using a formula sum, but there must be a functionality which automatically chooses the data based on the input, right? Now how does it do? Let's see. If I name these cells as year end 2008, enter. So it takes me to the cell YE 2008. That means I cannot use that particular name. So let me do one thing. Let me scroll back to our data. Let me modify the data a bit. That is, let me make this year end underscore 2008 and let me make this year underscore 2009, and similarly you would notice the input values change inside it. This is the data validation list that was covered previously in level 1, level 2. So if I go and name these cells once again, this time with the underscore in YE underscore 2008, it's not case sensitive. Let me press enter. Accepted. Let me name this as year end YE underscore 2009, enter. Now if I say equal to sum, indirectly give me that range reference which is being pointed with the value given in this cell. Let's see what I get. So year end 2008, let me quickly check. I've used an alt equal to sign to quickly add up the numbers. So 360 and 730. Now if I choose this 2009, it gives me 730. Why? Because it says indirectly whatever B17 is saying, and that is referring to a name which is referring to a cell range which talks about the numbers respective to the years. So this is basically giving you that array which contains all the numbers. And based on this premise, we'll use another case study which is quite often used in financial modeling, and that's there in the next sheet. Just a quick disclaimer. To do this exercise, you must be comfortable with the data validation list, the formula indirect, the basic part, the VLOOKUP, and the range naming that we just did. Now let's say I have a small model which says sales, cost and profit. Now I would want that whenever I choose best case, it should pick up the values from the best case, which is from the another sheet. Whenever I choose worst case, it should pick up the values from the other sheet. Now the structure of the data remains same for all. It's just that the numbers have changed based on the scenario. So if I were to build this scenario, how do I do that? Let's say, let me take the case of base case. If you had only one case, that is base case, what you would have done? You would have said, let me apply VLOOKUP, look for the common link which is present vertically in my table array, which is the next sheet, sales, comma. Now typically you would have gone inside reference sheet and chosen the entire thing and press F4, comma, isn't it? And within which you would have said column index number 2. Why? Because there are only 2 columns, and from the second column you would want to get the answer. And lastly, since this is not a slab, something which we discussed previously in our videos, I'll be using false. Let me close the bracket and press enter. So as of now, when I drag this down, it gives me answer for the base case. But if I change this to best case, it doesn't change. Why? Because you have to change the cell references, which should not be pointing to base case, but the one given below it, right? So I want to automate this selection of table array. And how do I do that? Let me take the help of naming and indirect. That is, let me go to reference sheet. Let me name this as base, enter. Let me name this as best. Let me press enter. Let me name this as worst, enter. So all of them have same structure, and to check whether the naming has been done correctly, let me choose base. Let me choose best. It is pointing to this. Let me choose worst, and it points to that. Now, what I'll be doing is, in the table array, the one that has been highlighted, let me delete that and say indirectly, refer to what this cell has to say. Let me press F4 so that it is fixed, it doesn't move down, and let me close the brackets. Alright, let's see what happens. So indirectly it is pointing to the array which talks about best. Tomorrow if I change this to worst, indirectly it points to the table array which talks about worst. That's being referred by the name. And this is how I can build a very dynamic financial model, although this is just one of the bricks of the wall. But nevertheless, the same principle will apply. So based on this, I have been able to create 3 different scenarios. So we had used VLOOKUP, basic VLOOKUP. In fact, if you have a bigger data, you can also use match. Apart from this, I had named it. I had also used indirect, and that is in place of an array. So I'm just keeping the formula open for your display. Give it a try. Very, very dynamic.